tells a true story of bravery and hope in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds and stars Erika Marais, winner of an Ovation Award at the National Arts Festival in the role of Eleanor. That's writer, actor and director Paul du Toit's latest play based on Ronnie Kasril's Paton award-winning book, The Unlikely Secret Agent. The cast includes du Toit as Ronnie himself, Ntlanhla Morgan Kutu and Sanda Shandu. To tell us more, we are now joined by actor and director of The Unlikely Secret Agent, Paul du Toit. Now, Paul, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Simpy. We're great to be here.
Now, for someone who may not know, give us a brief synopsis of what The Unlikely Secret Agent is all about and what the inspiration is behind the award-winning book.
Right. Well, myself, I must admit, I'd never heard this story before. And I think that speaks to Eleanor's modesty. She was a modest to a point. But the story takes place between 1960 and 1963, South Africa. The country is on a knife edge.
Yeah.
B.J. Vorster has declared the state of emergency as Minister of Justice. Verwoerd is president. The Sharpeville massacre has taken place. Against this background, a woman, a white single mom, from a very comfortable middle-class background, meets a young, hot-headed communist called Ronnie Kasril. And he opened her eyes to what was going on in the country. A lot of white people from that era found it really easy to look the other way. The apartheid regime made it very, I want to say easy for that to happen, but it happened a lot. And before long, Eleanor decided that she should do something. And they were young and in love, and they joined Umkhonto weSizwe. Eleanor was a very clever lady. She was raised by an engineer, so had very good technical skills. So found that she was really good at building timers. So they started and building bombs. And so they started a bombing campaign of not injuring civilians, but scaring the population and getting a message across to apartheid South Africa that this has to stop. They took out the power stations in Natal, took out the power supply to the whole province. They took out the central post office, and they also attacked the offices of the dreaded security branch, a branch of the South African police force that by B.J. Vorster had been given special powers and you could call immunity from the rule of law to track down and detain anti-apartheid activists. Mm-hmm. It was all going really well for them, and they were having fun, and suddenly she got arrested by them.
Okay.
And she was held under the 90-day detention act, which is a frightening act, where once you are arrested, there needs to be no trial. You are not allowed to see a lawyer. You can be kept for 90 days in solitary confinement, after which you can then be detained for another 90 days, ad infinitum. And sitting in this situation, she realized she had to devise an escape, which, to cut a long story short, she did. She was heavily questioned. The cops wanted to know where B.J. Vorster was, where Ronnie Kasril was. And he didn't tell them a word. And they didn't know that they had in their hands the person who'd been driving the getaway cars, who'd been building the bombs, and who'd been planting bombs. Unbeknownst to them, they actually had the person they were looking for. And to cut a long story short, she faked a nervous breakdown and got transferred to a mental hospital in Pietermaritzburg, from where she planned her escape.
Sure, hectic, eh? Let's talk about your relationship with Ronnie Kasril and the kinds of conversations you had with him.
Ronnie has been unbelievable. He's a legend in his time. He's a very principled man and made it very clear that there were certain provisos to doing the story. He treats this as a very important story. Obviously, it's a story about the woman he loved, but it's also a very important story for the nation. It's the echo of that generation of activists, it doesn't matter what race, white, black, Indian, who gave so much for our freedom, and for whom, should we squander that freedom, it must be really difficult to deal with. Now, he's been warm. I met him over Zoom. It was a lockdown project. I saw him, like, we see each other now. He's been incredibly supportive, and he's come down. He's flown down to Cape Town. He's staying in Gordons Bay at the moment, and he's watching the play. The reception from him has been so warm, and the first night he was just weeping. It was the best reaction we could have hoped for from him. And he tells us that we've really captured who she was, and we've captured the the frightening history that we all came from in a story that no one's heard of before.
Sure. And you star as Kasril's himself in the production, and I would imagine it must have been a very, very tedious task to undertake, because you simply had to immerse yourself in that role and just be him and tell the story through his perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, to play a guy like him, he's that rare white person from the time who actually decided to do something. And unfortunately, it was a very rare breed, him and Eleanor. But I can tell you, the first night he came to watch rehearsal, I was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. I mean, there's this legend of our political and social scene sitting there. But he's been so supportive and so warm. He's helped us so much. He's done a Q&A session with us. He did that last night. And when on the 16th, Youth Day, he will be joining us on stage after the show to talk to the youth who are coming to watch the show, for whom this history is lost. It's not taught in schools. It's not spoken about in, especially this story has never been heard of. And I think it's very important for him to tell the youth of today what our history is, where we come from, and what was given for their freedom.
Indeed. Now, Erika Marais takes the role of Eleanor. You've went to town just describing for us who Eleanor is. So how would you describe how Erika portrays this woman?
I think it would be best to. Last night we had Eleanor's cousin in, and we had Ronnie in. Yeah. And they say that she has nailed her perfectly. She's got her mannerisms. Eleanor was a chain smoker, a very nervous woman. She chewed her nails. But at the same time was beautiful and kind and demure, very slender, quite beautiful blonde woman. Quite honestly, the last person you would expect to be a secret agent. She worked in a bookshop. She loved the arts. So hence the name, The Unlikely Secret Agent.
Okay. Now, Paul, why, in your opinion, is this story worth telling and even staging in 2021? Put simply, what's the message behind this production? What are you hoping the audience will take away from The Unlikely Secret Agent?
Well, the production is a nod to protest theatre. It's such a big part of our history. But it's not protest theatre in that we're trying to change anything now. We're trying to enlighten. We're trying to pay tribute to this woman. And the story is essentially a love story. But one of the big protests that we are protesting at the moment, in a gentle way, is the fact that our society is so horribly affected by this dreadful pandemic. So we will do theatre. We will tell our stories. We insist on being careful. We are testing people's temperatures when they come in. Hands are sanitized, masks are worn, people are socially distanced when they sit in the auditorium. But we feel that this pandemic has really given us a time to think about what is important in our lives. Human contact, human stories, the human condition. And I think by telling that in a play and in a piece of theatre, in the safety of a darkened room where people can be transported, I think is a really beautiful thing, an important thing.
Paul, great chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for chatting to us this morning.
Thank you very much, Simpiwe.
Good stuff. Now, actor and director of The Unlikely Secret Agent, Paul du Toit, speaking to us about a new play based on Ronnie Kasril's award-winning book, The Unlikely Secret Agent. Well, it will be staged at the Drama Factory, Somerset West, from the 10th to the 20th of June this year.